Hello class, Mr. Guarino here. In this video, I'm going to illustrate how to use layers in your Animate project. And to do that, I'm going to make a mashup of cartoon characters. So here's the one I already made. Show you the finished product, what we're going to try and get to. So I actually have a drawing that I had done. It's a crane. And I made this so that I could basically pick up a character and throw it when I do an animation. We're not there yet, but just so you know, that's where I was going with this. And you could see a bunch of different cartoon characters here. We got Stewie, we got SpongeBob and Patrick, we got Cartman, Eric, Stan, Kenny, Kyle, Stan, Kenny. This is actually Ezra Bridgers, I think? Ezra. From Star Wars Rebels. This is Bart Simpson, and behind him is Angelica from Rugrats. And then, of course, I put a nice background there as well, just because that's what I wanted to use. Initially, I was thinking South Park, so that's why I got the snow and the mountains and stuff. Oh, and don't forget the truck. And so, you'll first have to go on the internet and get a bunch of cartoon characters, put them in your project, and move them around or put them on different layers. And that's what this project's all about, but we'll have some fun with some cartoon characters. Later, when we learn animation techniques, we can actually take this file that we already have a bunch of stuff on and then make it, instead of static, make it an animation. So let me start a new file. And as I've been doing, I'm using this preset, 30 frame rate, HTML5 canvas, create. And I've already downloaded. Where did I put this? Oh, it's on my other screen. Here we go. So I've already downloaded all that stuff for the project, so you don't have to watch me go on the internet and download it. And since it's a project with a lot of assets, I actually made a folder called Cartoon Mashup Layers, so that everything would be in one spot. So I want to, let's just do the background first. So I'm going to go back to Animate, do File, Import to Library. Go to, and I was just here, so it's going back to the same folder, but of course. Find the folder where you downloaded all your cartoon characters. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You should know how to do that by now, how to download pictures from the internet. And then I'm going to import this picture. Now, of course, remember, it doesn't go on the stage. It only goes into the library. And then I'm going to, let me reduce this, 75%. I'm going to drag that image onto the stage. At this point, I have two options. I can either, because I want this to be the same size as the stage, I can either resize the picture to match the stage, which we did in a previous video. Click on the picture, go to the alignment tab, check off align to stage, and click match width and height. And then align it top and right, and then it's perfect. Or, if I didn't want it quite that big, just another option. If I know I don't want to adjust my picture for whatever reason, and I want to adjust my stage, if I click anywhere on the stage or even off the stage, as long as I don't have an element selected like that picture, if I click over here, you'll see the stage is 1280 by 720. If I click on the picture, you'll see it's 960 by 540. So if I click away, I can change this to 960 by 540. So now that I made the stage the same size as the picture, just another way to make them match. And then I would still go to my alignment panel and align it to the right. Oops, got to click on the picture first. Align it to the right, align it to the top, and there I have my picture, and maybe I can bring this back to 100%. We haven't talked about this before, but when you import something, or even when you draw something, it puts it on down here, what we call a layer. It defaults to layer 1, but it's a good idea to name things when you're going to have a lot of things on one or in one file. To rename it, you just double click the word and you name it something. Very common if it's the background to name it BG for background. To create a new layer, you can click this button and it defaults to just layer 2. If you want to delete a layer, you click the garbage pail while the layer is selected. Realize anything on that layer goes away when you delete the layer. So if you had a drawing on there, when you delete the layer, it deletes the drawing, or a picture or whatever. You can also make the layer invisible, and you can lock it. When it's not locked, I can move it around. Let me undo that. When it is locked, oops, not invisible. When it is locked, I can click here, but I can't drag it, which is good to do for the background, because usually once you stick the background there, you don't want it to move. So lock the background. Okay, so now on layer 2, I'm going to import some more stuff. And actually, what happens is, and this is what I was talking about in a previous video, if I go to File, Import, and I say to Stage, when I import it, it puts it on the layer that's active at the moment, whichever one is highlighted. And if I have this highlighted and I import the truck, then it's on the same layer with the background. Actually, it won't even let you do that because the background's locked. So it just causes problems. So I always like to just import to the library only. So I'm going to go, see, actually now that that's chosen, this is grayed out, it won't let you go onto the stage because it's locked. So import to library. And you can do a bunch in one shot. First I'm going to do this one just to show you something. Then the rest of them I'll do all together. So I import SpongeBob and Patrick. I go to library, Bob and Pat, and I drag them on the screen. And the layer is locked, so I can't do it. Let me go to layer 2, drag them on the screen. And there they are. They're huge compared to the picture. That's okay. We can shrink them down. So now I can scroll around and try and find the handles. Like if I hit the free transform tool, I mean, they're there, but they're off the screen because this thing is so big. So this is where using the free transform panel can come in. Make sure this lock is on so you don't change the proportions. And if you click here and maybe just type in a number like 25, you can shrink it much easier than trying to find the handles and grab them. Now that the handles are on the screen, you can grab it and drag it by hand. If you don't hold down Shift, you can squish them one way or the other. But if you hold down Shift, it restrains the proportions. And so there we go, we got it. But that looks really yucky because we got this white rectangle around them. And we want to get rid of that. So I'm actually going to delete them. So I can delete them off the stage, but they're still in the library. So while I have that selected in the library, I can come down here and hit the garbage pail. You could just press delete on your keyboard. Either way, and get rid of that. Because what I really want to do is I want to go to Photoshop and get rid of that white rectangle that's all around there. In my folder, you'll see I have a bunch of files that are noted as PNG. PNG files support transparency. JPEGs do not. JPEGs are usually used for like photography. PNGs are used more for like cartoons and animations and stuff. It's not that you can't use one in the other place, but a JPEG doesn't have any transparency. It always fills the rectangle. If there's nothing there, it fills it with white. If it's a picture of, I don't know, people playing flag football at Harrison High School, you see the people and then you see the field and the building behind there. It fills the rectangle. But cartoon characters usually would want to be transparent so we can move them around. So in Photoshop, I'm going to open that and you can go to File, Open, or if you find that file, JPEG, right click, Open With, and choose Photoshop. If it's not on the list, you can choose another app. If it doesn't pop up here, you can always click More Apps. Eventually, it's going to pop up somewhere on the list. Choose Photoshop and say OK. So if any of the pictures you download from the internet, when you put them in Animate, you see this white rectangle. If it's a JPEG, it's got to have it. It doesn't support transparency. If it's a PNG, Well, it's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes they have it, and you can't tell because you could be on a website with a white background, and you don't know if there's a white rectangle behind the thing or not. So you either got to bring it into Photoshop or drag it on Animate, and if you see there's the white rectangle, then you know it's there, and you go get rid of it. In Photoshop, it's very easy to get rid of this. I like to, instead of working on the background layer, I like to copy that first. So you can double click this to change it from the italics to background, because when the word background shows up, it means it's locked and you can't change certain things of it. So rather than unlock it, I like to preserve the original. So the first thing I do is press Control J, and it copies the layer. So now it's called Layer 1. And notice it's not italicized and there's no lock. So I can do anything I want on Layer 1 and leave the background the way it is. So if I screw something up really bad on Layer 1, I'll just delete Layer 1 and recopy the background and start over. So go back to Layer 1. Most common mistake in Photoshop is people do things to their picture when they have a layer selected other than the one they want to work on, because they just don't realize they clicked on a layer before, and they went and did something before they actually chose the layer they should be clicked on. So that's the most common mistake. So make sure you're on Layer 1 and go to the magic wand and just click in the white, and it should select all the white. And the reason why I like to do this cartoon mashup, cartoon characters usually have a nicely defined edge, and Photoshop works by knowing the dissimilar colors. So when you click on white, it picks everything that's white and doesn't select everything that's not white. If you didn't have this defined edge to his arm, it would have picked the white sleeve and maybe even his shirt over here. But because there's a black outline on there, it knows not to go over it. So while that's all selected, I just hit delete. And I did hit it, but what happened? Nothing happened. Well, actually something happened. But it's a layer drawing. So I deleted the white stuff off of Layer 1, but the white stuff from the background is still showing through. But if I turn off the background, you'll see this checkerboard. Checkerboard means transparency. Weird thing on the internet, sometimes you'll see a picture with a checkerboard and you'll think it's transparent and you'll download it and it actually isn't transparent. Somebody did something wrong when they posted the picture, and it is actually a real checkerboard. We don't want that, we want transparency. Also, sometimes the magic wand doesn't do such a great job. It usually does do a pretty damn good job, but every now and then it might miss something that you want to get rid of. So what I like to do is create a new layer by clicking the plus sign down here, drag it in between. Turn off that layer, so only have that selected. The selection I made should be deselected. Control D to deselect. Okay, so now on this layer, I'm going to use my paint bucket. Notice they're very similar to the Animate tools, but not exactly. They put the gradient tool in Photoshop with the paint bucket, and Animate, it's got its own button, so whatever. So paint bucket tool, I'm going to choose a color that's not in the picture. So a bright green was not part of SpongeBob or Patrick. And then I'm going to go back to my paint bucket tool. Oh, I got to say OK over here. And then click, and I just got a green layer. So when I put them back on, if there was a little white speck that was still there, I would know that the magic wand missed it, and then I could go and erase that white speck with any type of tool in Photoshop that would work. Usually just the lasso tool. Lasso around the white speck, delete it, and then the green will show. So the green is just showing you a better way to see than the checkerboard. Okay, so now I say, oh, yep, I like this. So I'm going to turn off the green. So I have what I want. I'm going to do File, Save As, save on my computer. And notice I had previously done this, so I'll just call it Bob and Pat 1. Saving it to my cartoon mashup layers. And you can actually import a Photoshop file into Animate because they're both Adobe products. That works, but it's actually a little bit more common to use a PNG. So we'll go down here, and because it is so common, when you go to export, see how it says quick export as PNG? People use that all the time. So just choose that, and it's going to call it bobandpat1.png. I don't want it in my downloads though. Click my folder, my drive, my shortcut, my folder for this project, and click Save. And now I can close this out. I'll leave Photoshop open, so I'll just minimize it. I'll go back to Animate, do my file, import to library, and I'm looking for bobandpat1.png. Got that. When I click here, it kind of looks the same because it shows this white rectangle around it, because it's got to show you something there in the preview. But when I drag it onto layer 2, you'll see that it's transparent, especially once I go to my free transform tool and put in 25. So that looks a whole lot better than having that really cruddy looking white rectangle around it. So I'm going to put them over here somewhere. And click away and name this layer Bob and Pat. Hit enter. So now I want to import the rest of my assets. So I'm going to go to File, Import to Library. I'm going to click on Bart, and then I'm going to hold down Control and click on all the other assets I want. I already have Bob and Pat, but I need the dump truck. I need Eric, Ezra, Kenny, Kyle. I don't need the background. I already did that. Chef, Stan, Stewie. Let me scroll down. Hit Angelica, so now I got the wall. And click Open. So now here's all the assets I want. Now every one of these should be put on a different layer. I mean, sometimes you don't have to, but it's usually a good idea. So I'm going to click and make a bunch of layers, a bunch of new layers. I'm going to drag this up to give me more room to see all my layers. So let's do, I'm going to skip Bart for now. I did Bob and Pat, and I got the truck, right? I'm going to click here and say truck, hit enter, and then drag on the dump truck. And again, you can see it's kind of big. This one's not too big. I can grab it, shift, drag it, move it down. All right, it's a little small compared to the characters. There we go. And then I got Eric, so I'll make a layer called Eric, hit enter, drag Eric onto the screen while that layer is selected. And he's kind of big, so let me go to free transform, put in 25, seems to work. He's still kind of big. Hold down shift, drag, move him over here. Okay, now I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to forget to rename this next layer. In fact, I'm going to leave it on Eric and bring in Ezra. So I'm going to go to Ezra, drag him on the screen, and resize him, and then say, oh, wait a second, I forgot to make a layer for Ezra. Oh, click here, type in Ezra. Now you could just delete him and bring him back in on the proper layer. But the other thing you can do too, and notice when I click on him, the Eric layer lights up. When I click on truck, the truck layer lights up. When I click on Eric, the Eric layer lights up. But when I click on Ezra, the Ezra layer doesn't light up because I put him on the wrong layer. All you have to do is right click. You could delete it and bring it back in. Say cut. Click on Ezra. Right click. Paste in place is very nice because it puts him in the exact same place that he was, just on the other layer. So now he's on his right layer. So now I'm going to do Kenny. And drag on Kenny. Resize him. Let's see. I had the crane thing on my other stuff, but we won't bother doing that now. We got Kyle, so make a layer for Kyle. Let's make this the last one, because why watch me drag things on the screen, right? Got better things to do. Resize him. Sometimes if you go too small, it kind of messes up the picture. So if that ever happens in your Animate file, instead of using a picture that's way big and shrinking it down, first bring it to Photoshop and resize it, and then bring in the small one. Sometimes that helps with these scale problems that sometimes occur. And let's just do one more layer. And this one I'm going to call Bar, B-A-R, Angelica. So I'm going to bring on Angelica. I'll make her a little bigger just because I want to show you something. And where's Bart and Bart? So I'm going to put them on the same layer. Another mistake, or I made the same mistake again, right? And let's see, shrink him down. So now what I want to do is I want to put his head on top of her head. I'm actually going to make his head a little, I'm going to change the proportions. Okay, just so it looks weird. And then Ezra, I'm going to move him over here. Make him a little bigger too. So now I want to use my lightsaber to chop off Bart's head and let it go flying out into space. When that happens, you'll see Angelica. So I really didn't kill anybody. I just made Bart's head go flying away. But if you're doing an animation and you have two assets on one layer, you can't animate them independently. You can animate them together. They can both move the same way, same direction, and the same everything about their animation has to be the same. But if you want her to maybe like fall down and his head to go flying off, they have to be on different layers. So same thing as before. We could, and if this was, if I say here, arrange, bring to front, you know, she's in front of him, it doesn't look right. So we can do this arrange, send back one. Actually, I wanted to do Angelica, right? Arrange, not send to back, send backward. Okay, so now it would look right, but they need to be on separate layers so that we can do our animations. So what I'm going to do is right click on Angelica, cut her, make another layer, call this Angelica, rename this to just Bart, click back on the Angelica layer, don't put her back on the Bart layer, that would be silly, and then right click, she's still on the clipboard, paste in place. So now she's on the Angelica layer. But look what happened, she's in front now, because whatever layer is on top is the layer that's closest to your face. So if you want her on the bottom, you click on her layer, you hold it down and you drag under Bart, and now she's behind Bart. Same thing with Kenny and Kyle, right? Kenny and Eric. Kenny is in front of Eric because Kenny's higher than Eric. But I can take Eric and put him above Kenny, and now his fat ass hides Kenny. Remember, they call him Fat Ass Eric. Fat Ass Cartman. Okay, so now if I wanted to do my animation, I could have Ezra maybe come flying in from the right, hit with his lightsaber. I guess he should be in the front, right? So maybe he should be on the top. He's going to hit, and then Bart's head is going to fly off. Maybe as it's flying off, it's going to spin around and shrink and disappear. And then someone's going to say, that's kind of weird, Guarino. What's wrong with you chopping heads off? I can say, well, I didn't. All I did was reveal Angelica. Okay? So that would be like the foundation of an animation that you could work on. But first we're going to do just getting used to importing lots of assets, putting them on different layers, arranging them in the layer stack to be the way we want, locking things we want to lock, making invisible things we want to make invisible, rearranging the stack, and adding new layers if we need them. And so now we have a nice mashup of cartoon characters all in one file with them all on separate layers. So that's what I'm looking for you to do. Give me a nice background. Give me a couple of different cartoon characters. I kind of like it when the cartoon characters aren't from the same show, just because that kind of makes it a mashup. I don't know. So do what you want, but get used to using layers, and have in the back of your mind when you do this that later on, in the not too distant future, we're going to turn this cartoon mashup static picture into an animation. Okay, thank you very much.